Hi, good day. Jo here over at Wooliecottage. So this is part 2 of gradient spinning. So last week I filmed doing a gradient on the only roving that I could find up in my studio that I expect. To be fair, any rovings that I dye are usually with a bat in mind. So I don't always have gradient rovings, but I do generally do gradients or layered gradients in my bats. Now I have found one in my studio. I need to go and find it on the listings because it had no label card in it. But this one here, I can't remember the name of it. It is part 2 is making a gradient spin with an art bat. So as long as you've got a art bat from a producer that has at least 3 different colours going through it. I mean, it could be 2 colours to be fair, but 3 just gives you a nice, more even look. And yes, it's an odd number, but believe me, it works. It's the same when you're planting in the garden. You always do them odd numbers. Even Sir Monty Don will always tell you planting 3s, 5s or 9s. You need to have an uneven number, an odd number, for something to look pleasing to the eye. So that's why myself especially, I always do everything in odds when it comes through. So it does have a slight gradient through there. There is a lighter blue, like a turquoise on this side, and then it goes into a purple, and then it's sort of a blue sort of colour. So I am going to be working with these. I've got 2 of them pulled out. I'm only going to be spinning one up, and I'm going to spin it into a single, because remember last week I mentioned about how I process my single yarns once I've finished spinning them up. So I'm going to show you quickly after I've spun this up how I do it and the effect that I get. And then at the weekend when I do my live chat on Saturday, it should be dry by then to be able to show you exactly what the finished look looks like. So yeah, so we've got these underneath, you've got these violet purples. This is what it looks like underneath, and you really can't see the gradient in it, but I promise you it has got a gradient in there. So I've got these 2 here, so I'm just going to tilt you down in a second and you can see how now you can process it in 3 different ways. You can do a fractal and create a gradient spin like that, but that is definitely a video for another day because it takes a bit of explaining, and you can get out your blending board and get your little separate pieces and make them into punies and then create an order that way, which might be easier for some people to process because there's loads of little footy bits that goes into doing that. It just takes a bit longer to explain, but doing this and these 2 methods I'm going to show you now, and then I'll go off and spin off one of them into a single, and then I will show you how I process that at the end for it to not fall apart. Okay, so there's my bat stretched out. I'll just move my earphones out of my way. So you just want to fluff it out, make sure it's all neat and nice, and you've not got no lumpy uneven sections in there if you can help it. Just give it a nice little tug out. Now you can make I'm going to do strips with this one, and then you draft out and make little nests for yourself, or again, as I say, you can stick them on each strips if you find it easier to spin from a roll lag. Take each strip, stick them on your blender board and create your roll lags, not a problem. I just do drafting straight from my gradient bats. So I literally, what you can do, you can split it straight down the middle. So you end up with 2 halves. They're never going to be equal because when you blend up your bats, sometimes you end up with more areas with a little bit more fibre than the other, or when it's just been sat there in storage and put away. So literally 1 piece taken off, split that all the way down the middle. I'll just put that 1 piece to one side, and then you could potentially get 3 good strips out of that. So I'm just going to tear down the side here. Now if you've got a gradient bat like what I have got, a gradient layered bat, so when I mean gradient layer, I have got gradients of colours going through in one layer, and then the next layer I'll maybe embellish it with different fibres, but then on top of that I'll put a solid colour that complements the colours I've already blended with. So I'll end up with a solid colour, a gradient, embellished, solid colour, gradient, embellished, and that's how it'll end off. That's how I do my gradient layers. So you've got pops of colour that come through all the time, and then you've got colours that will just appear now and again. So that's one strip. So you just have to remember when you're stripping off your gradients into sections that you keep them in their own colour coordination. Oh, just pull that all the way down the bottom. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, and I'll do the same with this one. Spin that off. Now you could do a semi-fractal with this and spin off one half of your bat, this half here, spin that right off without doing anything else, and then get your sections that you've peeled off and then spin them off on their own and then ply them together. You are going to end up with a semi-fractal on that. Alternatively, you could go and find yourself a bat that you've got in your stash. It might be like a lovely dusky blue, but it's all solid one colour for the exact same amount of weight that you've got for this one. Spin that off and use all these sections and then apply them together, and you'll end up with a gradient on a gradient fractal on that as well. So that's what I've got so far. So then what I do with that is I literally just draft it out. Sorry, I need to come over a little bit. I've got my camera in a funny angle today. So you can see all those colours that I've got going through there. So you can see the layering that I've done. There's actually greys, purples, very dusky soft teals in there, and some lovely turquoisey blues. They do complement each other as well. And then with the silver in there or the grey, it really makes the pops of colour in there. So I literally just wrap that up into a little nest and do that, and then do the exact same on the other one. Draft it out just so all your drafting is done before you're going to sit at your wheel and you've done all your prep work beforehand. There you go. If you want to do this as a fractal spin, what I would do is I would have my half that I would cut into strips if it was like this. So I'm trying to think how I would normally do it. So you've got these sections here, and then I would break this one round about halfway length, and then with the half left on this section I would then take into another just over a half of that, and then left with a little piece of the bottom, and then I would spin all these top halves off in one go, and then behind that I would spin off the next section, a little piece from the halfway to just over a quarter, and spin all those sections off one after another, and then do the same on this. Or you'd like that, spin that off, spin that off, spin that off, spin that off, then a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, and the remainder off 1, 2, 3, 4, and then spin them all off together. It's just a matter of having a play with it. I mean, you've just got to let your imagination wander. Oh, I wonder what that would look like if I did it this way. Think of it. I mean, once you've got it in strips, you can then imagine what it would look like as a roving. And when you break up your rovings, like I did last week, and you have your half, which is this piece, put to one side. And then I'm like, right, I need to split this one into half again. And then just over half or 3/4 of the last little section, and then spin off the little bits and do exactly what we did last week. We spun the half of the bat or the half of the roving off and one bobbin on its own, and then we did the alternating. So we spun off the bigger sections, blah blah blah, and then we spun off the smaller sections, blah blah blah, and then we spun off the tinier sections, so you end up with shorter and shorter pops of continuous colouring all the way through. And it's really just the same thing, but what I'll do is when I do the fractal spin, the fractal on a bat, I will get another bat that's a complementary, and create the exact same, like two bats that are more or less solid colours, and I will spin them off as a fractal, and you can see exactly what the process is that I do for that. But it doesn't take a lot of effort. As I say, it just takes a little bit of playing around, especially when you're working with little tiny things. Having a blending board and tiny bits of fluff really does help with that process. So I'll go along there. So that's one, that was one, that was two, that was three, and that's four. Because I don't want to mess up my my colourway, otherwise it won't be spinning off as a gradient. So if you've got any questions about that, just let me know and pop it in the... There we go, there we go. And I've got one more piece to do. There we go. So there we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nests. I'll pop you on fast forward and I'll do the other side, and then we'll go on to the other way that you can actually rip up your bat to make it workable. Okay, so I've done these like this, and I'm looking at it now and thinking it actually really doesn't look like that much of a gradient. But imagine if you've got a bat that has got say a green section, a mulberry section, and say a dark charcoal grey section, so a dark grey section, and you got your green section and you strip that bit off, then you strip that into 3 pieces, okay? And then your next section is your mulberry colour, so you strip that off into 3 sections on its own, and just lay them along there. But make sure they do them in order, because with some blenders like myself, we actually cross over our fibres, so you end up with a gradual change from one colour to another. So if you make sure that you're in the right order for spinning it along, you'll see that colour change as you go through. And then when you get to your grey, strip that, you've got that section left over, strip that into 3 sections, and there you've got your gradient. I'm looking at this and thinking there really isn't much of a colour change through this, even though I know there is one. It seems to be quite a lot of solid layering. So what I'll do on that note is I've literally just been up and done my YouTube live, and I'm going to go and grab my bat from my weaving, and I'll show you what I'll do next. Okay, so everyone saw me making this earlier on at lunchtime on my live chat on YouTube. This is from a swag along. So you should be able to see there's actually, on this section here, I have got a dark navy blue underneath, and I've got this dark brown alpaca. And then I've got a alpaca silk blend on top of a mid blue. And I've got this tealy blue on this end with a fawn alpaca on the top of that. It's quite hard to see because the blues really don't have much of a change. And then I've got this is a semi, a layered semi gradient. So I have actually got layers of brown in between of these. And then I've got these pops of blue. So they are different shades of blues that I've got going on here. So you can see straight away there. And then it goes more darker blue. And then it goes a more darker blue. And then a little bit darker than that. So I've got natural grey merino. This is a merino nylon blend in brown underneath, and then I've got these fibres in between. But yeah, so I'll do this next section, this next idea with mine, just so you can see. And I'll have to decide which one I'm going to spin off. I'm going to spin this off into singles and ply it with the linen yarn. So what I might do is spin this one off so you can see the subtle gradient that I've got going on. Mine is a solid colour gradient, with these going along in the same order, so that you should be able to see the difference. But really at the end of the day, all you wanted me to do was show you how to prep your bats. And if you've got a coloured gradient, as I say, I've got dark blue, I've got mid blue, and I've got a really light, I've got a softer tealy blue on this section. So there is a colour change, but it's a gradual colour change, and it is a gradient gradual colour change through my bat. So with this, I do my elbow stripping join. So I'm just going to move these up a little bit so I can get in and do what I need to do, and I will do that, stretch it out a little bit because there's loads of lumps because it's been sat there, it's folded and it's been relaxed and everything else. So it's quite a lovely airy fairy fibre, this one. So what I do is I go in about 1.5 inches. Can you see that? Let me just see if I can point this light a bit more. Go in 1.5 inches onto the end of your bat and gently, and try and keep it as even as you possibly can, all the way, not all the way down the bottom, but go to about 1/4 away from the bottom. Okay, so there we go. I'm just going to gently. Right, now I have got about 2.5 to 3 inch gap from my bottom to my top. Now I'm going to leave that where it is, come back over about 1.5 inches to 2 inches to the side, and I'm going to tear that all the way up again to the top and make another elbow join. So do that there, all the way to the next section. Right, so there, can you see that? Pull that apart, and I have got this section up the top here, and it's about 2.5 inches or so wide at the top. I'll leave that there, come back over this side, another approximately 2.5, 2 inches or whatever is at that side there, and I just ever so gently tease these fibres all the way down the bottom. Not all the way down to the bottom though, I want to give myself a lovely gap there. So there we go, and I have to be careful because this is where I've stripped it off the carder, so I have got some loose fibres, but there's another elbow join. Okay, then I'm going to come back over here and do the exact same thing all the way up the top. And essentially, in essence, what you're doing is creating yourself a roving, okay, where it's all joined in one, like a zigzag. And I'll show you that in a second. So there's my next join there. So I'll just pull that over a little bit, come back over another 2 and a bit inches to the other side. Now, if this, as a gradient, as a, like, use pops of colour, Joe. Orange section, yellow section, say a red section. So what in essence I've got is orange, orange, orange going into red, 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 red going into yellow, and then splitting that through. So think of it as a colour, because you can't quite see the definition of my blue tones on this. So that's me going down nearly there where I want to be. Alright, so there's another elbow join there. Pull that over, go back down to the bottom, go on about 2 and a bit inches, and separate the fibres all the way over. So this is exactly what the method, I would find that this method for me, I find a lot easier to do and manage than doing the little nests. Doing the little nests, once you've thrown them in your basket and you've forgotten what colour order you're going in, unless it's absolutely obvious, then these are great for pre-drafting and everything else when you're just messing around with your bats. But if you want to make sure you've got your colour gradient, the zigzag elbow method is definitely a lot easier to do. So I'm just coming up to nearly the top there, so you go another couple of inches at the top of there, step over this way, pull out the roving to the bottom ish. Right, so there, stop there, and then go over a couple of inches, work my way up the top again, try and straighten that out and make it nice. There we go. So I've got another gap up the top there, but I've got a bit section there where it's quite thin, only because the way it's come off the carder, so I just want to try and avoid that a little bit. Now I'm going to come over and split down again. you want to try and make the splits as even as possible. You want it roughly stick to about 2.5 inches in gaps. 2.5 inches is fine. There's another gap down the bottom, so that's, I mean, you've got to think of it as wide as it is at that join there. Oh, a minute, you can't see. It's as wide at that join there as it is on this section that I've torn. So about 2 and a bit inches there and 2 and a bit inches to draft up. And then I'm going to come back over, and this could just about maybe be my last zigzag arm. Right, I could probably get away with doing another. Come down a bit. Split that off there. There we go. Right, so can you see this? So you have got an elbow join, okay, and you've got an arm going that way. Then you've got another elbow join up here, zigzag and zigzag. There you go, zigzag, elbow join down the bottom, another line there of like a semi roving, and elbow join here. Just push that over, see how I pull and the zigzag opens up. So you've got a solid piece there and a solid piece there, a join and a join here. Move that over and you can see what's happening there. Zigzag up to an elbow join, elbow join, elbow join, and the exact same thing all the way over. And that's it. That's the essence of it. Honestly, it's not hard to do. Now, the next bit I would do, just gently pop that over the side, is I will start to draft out ever so gently, but not a lot. Just draft it out. So you've pre-drafted before you get anywhere near your loom. And then when you're spinning it, I've had people say, well, how do you get past the elbow? Literally, when you're spinning it, just turn. Well, it's going to, I braid mine once I've done this pre-draft. I braid it and you'll see where the knuckle joins are coming in as you get to that section. But just hold that in place in your hand, right? Hold that elbow joint in place in your hand when you just draft that out so you don't lose it and you still have one continuous draft of roving and a bit more draft there. I'm coming up to another elbow joint here now, so there's another elbow joint there. So I'm just going to make sure I've got a hold of it in my hand so I don't lose that join, and it will even itself all out when you start to spin it up. Have a bit of faith. Okay, so I'm just going to, oh, I nearly pulled that too much. So I'm coming up to another elbow joint. I don't want to draft it too much because at the end of the day, when I'm sat there, I can draft out the little sections as I undo them from the braid. Okay, here's my elbow joint here. Do you see that? Those bits that I was making gaps for down the bottom, and I'm just going to literally hold it and pinch it in my hand and just draft that section out there. And again. There we go. So here's my next, you see that V there? So I'm just going to ever so gently grab that in my hand now and pull up and draft the section again. And this is my next elbow joint. I'm just going to make sure that's secure in my hand so I don't lose it, I don't stretch it, because I want to make sure that I keep a continuous colour change all the way through. So there's my next elbow joint there. And just hold on to that a sec. There we go. Just skip by it if I have to, and then just draft it out. I'm just coming up to the next elbow. There you go. Nice big elbow joint section there. See the zigzag there? So it's your elbow, that piece there. So obviously you know what your elbow is, but I'm just saying for instance sake, there you go. So you have got the elbow joint on the bottom, there's the arm, and then it goes up to the next piece. So I'm just ever so gently, just carefully, just taking my time. There's absolutely no rush for me to do this. I'm going to hold on to this elbow joint here where I just stretch this piece out here. And here's my next piece. I like doing it like this. I don't mind the nests, but I prefer to do it like this because it means that if my basket gets knocked over at all, and my nests, if it's not obvious where the colour changes are, they all get knocked out and they're all over the place. So I've gone to my last 2 zigzag sections. Can you see that there? So there's the elbow there, and there's my last 3 bits that I've got to do. So I've got an elbow join there, I have got an elbow join here, and then that's the end. So I'm just going to hold on to that, make sure that's done. I've already drafted that bit out. So draft that bit out, hold on to that section there, and it will draft out for me. And these were the thinner pieces, so I don't need to draft them out too much. And grab a hold of that last elbow section. And there we go. I'm just going to take my ring off because sometimes my wool gets stuck, and then I literally braid it. I decide which end I want to start with spinning first. So this will be the bottom section. So once I've got this in place, then I know that's my end. So I get where the elbow is. If it's dangling out still too much, I just gather it in my hands, pull it through like I would the rest of it, and braid it up. And this means it's a really good working system. So you can just, as you finish a section, you can just undo your braid a little bit. I'm coming up to some more ends here where the elbow is. I'm just going to grab them in my hand so they don't get torn. I'm going to pull that through, and it'll hold together and hug together. There's another elbow section, so make sure it's all in together, and it will hug in place on this braid. Oh, and there's another piece there, so I'm just making sure they all sit together. And because it's all secure inside the braid, it will hold its shape. There's an elbow piece there. So again, just make sure I've got a good grip of that and it doesn't want to split on itself. Any weaknesses, keep on going. Another elbow bit, hold on to that, pull that through. And just be gentle when you're doing it. Another elbow, and that through. There's another elbow coming now. See how it's sticking out there? So I'm just going to tuck that in there. Get hold of that with my other hand. Brace that through. All the way through. There's those pops of yellows that I was doing on my live chat in the last bits, just to add in another dimension of colour into this. Quite a muted roving, but I'm hoping it'll look really nice once it's done. And there we go. There is one braid from a 100-gram bat. It's as simple as that. Look how pretty it looks. Hold on a minute, try and get away from that light. There we go. How pretty that looks. It looks like I've just bought that roving from a shop. And that's what you can do with any of your bats, to be fair. But if you want to keep the colour changes going, and you've got a really lovely, well pronounced gradient blend, or is a subtle change like mine is, then you just get your bat, your braid, and you just pull out what you need to get started really gently. Leave it on there, spin it like you're spinning from a roving, and then when you're finished doing what you're doing for the time being, you find your braid end and you just stick it straight back in there. And that is it. There we go. Doesn't that look nice? One braided art bat. It's just about thinking about how you want to do your planning. That means if I put that in a bag or in my weaving basket, my spinning basket, and I know it's good if it gets knocked by the animals or whatever when they're being manic and having a mental afternoon, I know that all my roving is going to be really safe. That bat that I've stood and spent 15-20 minutes creating, but I've spent an hour just prepping it, it's going to be safe like that, and then I can just get straight back to work and do it. So I hope that helped with thinking about how you're going to prepare your bat so you can keep your colours going, different ways of preparation of a bat, I'm going to go off and spin this off now, and I'll definitely at the end of it do a quick recording and show you how I do the wash method at the end of it. I'm going to spin this one off. I'm not going to bother with these ones because I don't think I'm going to be able to get the effect that I'm looking for, but I know that there's a gradient of this. But all I want to do is show you my method for making sure that your single spun wool is definitely going to be workable and not going to fall apart. But yeah, so I'll go off and do this, and I will record in a minute me washing off. Actually, I'll probably do it with this, because really all I want to do now is just show you how to process the single spun yarn after you've spun it. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I end up spinning up all those little bits. So this is really cold water from the tap. So I'm just going to swizzle this around inside this bowl of water, and then I'm going to run my sink with some hot water. Just let that get soaked in there. And this is the felting reaction that I was on about. So I've literally just spun this up in singles. It's turned out really, really pretty. I actually did take a picture, and that's far too cold for my poor hands. So that's in that bowl. I'm just going to run the sink, get some hot water. Oh, fibromyalgia, so it's actually take the breath away, and cold water are really, really not a good combination. It really, really hurts. Right, so I'm just waiting for this hot water. I'm just going to leave that soak in there for a few minutes. It doesn't need a long time, but it does need a water wash to set it. I'll just give that a tap over. Oh, water heating up the action. You know, sometimes when you're waiting for the hot water, it takes forever. It's like waiting for the kettle to boil. Oh, I can't hold my hand under that water for too long. Nearly. There we go. There's the hot coming in now. So that's that there going. Now I'm just going to use my delicate wash detergent and pour a little bit in there. Not a lot. You don't need a lot. Yeah, and I want that quite hot. So the reaction from this cold water to the hot water to actually work. But I'm really quite pleased how that's turned out spinning. Now, I haven't spun up mine, which is over there, but you can actually see the gradient that I've done. So right there in the middle, in that section there, there's the cream colour that I'd started out with from my hand dyed, and then it goes into more browns, and then it goes into blues, and then it goes into like a softer bluey grey. So that was my gradient, but I will be spinning that next Wednesday on my live chat on YouTube, on my swag along. So I will do the exact same method next Wednesday, and then I will start spinning it, so you can actually see that in action next week. To be fair, all the talking that I did in this video is about half an hour, or just under, once I fast forward the stripping the back section, but it's just too long for YouTube for a quick video. And I generally do try and keep in my video recordings for about half an hour, and it would have just taken too long. But I will show what this looks like on Saturday on my live chat on Instagram, and the other one I will definitely be spinning up next week. I'm just trying to wring this gently with my hand. I really don't want to put a load of water. There we go. Right, now straight into that hot water, and it is hot water. Straight in there. This one's got silks and merinos and stuff like that, and bamboo fibres in there, and I literally just leave it in there for about 5-10 minutes. it's definitely cooled down that water a little bit. That's got some hot corners over there. So I'm literally going to leave it like that for another 10 minutes, and then I will grab where I've tied it off and I will thwack it against my sink, and that will help stretch out and balance in those twists that are in my fibre. Now when you're spinning, hold on a second. My advice is, if you're going to spin your singles, if you treadle when you're usually spinning 5, maybe 6 treadles per stretch as you're feeding the yarn into the orifice, put another twist in there just to be on the safe side. It will definitely make sure that the yarn's going to be nice and strong as a single. I'm sorry, my finger's in the way. Nice and strong as a single. So instead of, as I say, if your usual treads, my usual tread's about 5, maybe 6, depending on whether I've lost count or not. So if you just put an extra treadle every time you do the draft out, spin in, draft out, spin in. So on your 5, go another 6. And then put it in, and then you should have that extra twist that you need in there, an extra twist, maybe 2 maximum, depends on how loosely that you spin anyway. But for singles, I definitely put in an extra twist or 2 at the maximum, and then do this method. And what this action actually does is slightly felt your yarn from the cold to the hot. The reaction, it does felt it, but not like a felting, like when it's matted and everything else. That's not what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is stiffen the yarn to cling to each other a bit more, so you end up with a stronger single yarn that you can actually do knitting projects with, where it's not going to fall apart. That's what you're looking for. So I hope this video helped you today. As I say, this roving, I will show how I did this again next Wednesday when I do my live chat, and I will spin this fibre as I'm going along. If you've got any questions or queries, just pop over to Instagram on Saturday when I do my live chat, or drop in the comments down below. I answer everybody all the time. I'm very reachable, and I do respond pretty sharpish because my phone's always with me. My whole life's on my phone. My business, my website, everything's on my phone. If you're looking for custom orders, please do reach out to me. Any orders over £35, whether they're custom or bought from the website, you get free postage for the UK. And I'm quite happy to sort that out. For this project at the moment that I'm doing for the swag along, I've just blended up about 700 grams worth of fibres. I've got a bit more fibre put aside that goes with the back that I showed you earlier on when I was doing the zigzag arm. It's about 700 grams, so I should have more than enough to be able to do my swag along. But if you'd like to come and join us every Wednesday about lunchtime over here on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button. As you know, I don't get paid for my videos, but I do have a Ko-fi account. I will leave a link in the descriptions, and you'll find me over in Ko-fi, Ko-fi, forget how to spell, and I'm on there as Wooliecottage if you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee, just to help towards me be able to do more spinning videos. And I'll quite happily give away whatever it is that I do for any sponsorship that people want to give me, or suggestions with the sponsorship of a cup of coffee, and then we'll sort something out whenever you make an order. So thanks very much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.